again, everybody, and welcome to Tiger Sidelines on MC22 alongside Gabe DeArmond and Dave Matter. I'm Bo Bayman. What once was 13-3 is now 14-7 and not trending in the right direction for the Missouri men's basketball team. They did get a much needed win at South Carolina, 93-78, but they could not back it up in falling at home to Ole Miss, 60-53. And Dave, I'll start with you. Unfortunately, here we are in late February, and this team is trending in the wrong direction.
Yeah, absolutely. They're scrambling right now. And unfortunately for them, they've got some tough games ahead of them. Now, they can still win those games. If you're good enough to beat Alabama and Illinois, you can beat Florida, and whether that's LSU or Vandy, probably LSU. You can win those games, but not the way they've been playing lately. So they are very close, dangerously close to finding themselves on the NCAA bubble. And then if that's the case, then you tighten up even more maybe. And, now you've got really something to protect that you should be playing for all along. They're just not playing well together. Now, they did Saturday at South Carolina, but everybody plays well against South Carolina these days. So that seems more like an outlier at this point.
And it seemed like maybe they would get an easier win at Texas A&M, but due to COVID, that one has been canceled. And Gabe, this team just can't figure out who to go to or who's hot, or they can't get anybody hot. I mean, the problem is the whole team. It's not just one or two guys.
Well, I thought actually they had a players only meeting. Those don't just solve everything. That doesn't fix it. Apparently playing South Carolina, if you're going to meet, do it before you play South Carolina. Right. That's the time to meet. But there's a line you have to tread here because we're dealing with college kids, right? But when you say it's everybody, I don't agree. It's not everybody. The problem here starts and maybe kind of ends with the point guard. And look, we've talked to Konzo after 7 losses this year. And after pretty much every one, he said, yeah, X went side to side and he wasn't attacking and all that. I mean, the offense is initiated with the guy with the ball in his hands 70% of the time, who for this team is Xavier Pinson. And to me, Drew Smith shares in the last loss, the one to I don't know, whoever they lost to. Ole Miss, yeah, that one. But they lost that game in 2 possessions. They come down, they're down 52-50. They throw a pass to Drew Smith in the high post, and he takes just like an off-balance, weird 15-footer. It was almost like he wasn't going to shoot and then figured out he was open and he shot. And then the next time they come down, they're down 54-50 after Pinson gave up a layup on the other end. And Pinson dribbles around for 15 seconds, tosses to Drew Smith, and he takes a guarded 22-footer. The game was over at that point on 2 possessions where Jeremiah Tillman, who Konzo didn't seem enamored with the game he played. I thought it was one of Jeremiah's best games. And then Kobe Brown, who has turned into a guy who can be pretty potent offensively. Neither of those two ever touched the ball in those 2 possessions. And that was the game. I mean, this team has to, like you said, they got to know who to go to. And Kobe Brown and Jeremiah Tillman are where this thing starts. And if they don't go through those guys, it's not going to work.
And that's a game where they fought all the way back from 13 down in the second half to eventually take a lead, but they couldn't sustain it. And to your point, they're down 4 or whatever with the ball, and they're dribbling around the perimeter with about 40 seconds left instead of, taking it to the basket, maybe drawing a foul and stopping the clock or getting an easy layup. It's just a matter of when it's go time, they don't all realize it's go time sometimes.
Another thing too is they're getting steady production out of Mark Smith. He was lost. He was like in a fog for a while, it seemed like, and now he scored in double figures. I think 5 of the last 7 games. He's not somebody you expect 20 points from, but he's scoring 12, 11, 13. I think he had the other day. He's not, if anything, he's not a liability anymore. And again, you got 3/5 of your lineup out there really producing. Now, I do think they missed Javon Pickett. He's clearly not healthy. He's also a guy you don't go into a game expecting to get a lot from, but he kind of fills in the holes sometimes. They don't have a guy doing that right now. And I agree with Gabe. Pinson is he's killing him out there. And I cut a little slack for Drew Smith sometimes because I feel like when it's not clicking with Pinson, Drew tries to compensate and do more than he should normally have to do. He's just not athletic enough to do the things Pinson does. And when both of them aren't connecting and clicking, they don't have a chance, because it's not like Tillman can initiate the offense. He can't bring the ball down and start it up. And the same with Kobe. I mean, those guys rely on the other two guys to get them the ball.
And here's the team that when Xavier Pinson, as much as we sung his praises the first 13 to 16 games, the last 2 weeks on the show, we've said there's been points where he's looked uninterested. And if he's uninterested, that's a problem. And I can't believe, if you'd have told me 2.5 weeks ago, we'd be talking about the NCAA bubble with this team, I'd have told you you're crazy. I still think they're in, but that shows you where this team has, evolved to or devolved to in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think talking about the bubble is a little premature. I mean, because yes, they're 7-7 in the SEC, and that's what everybody focuses on. They had the best non-conference in the SEC, and it wasn't even close.
Right.
And that counts. I mean, we're not just talking about the last 5 games. They're 14-7. And, Dave and I talked about this earlier this week, and I said this on our site. I think it's been a while since Missouri's really been in this NCAA tournament conversation. And people that follow Missouri have this misguided idea that only really good and elite teams make the tournament.
Right.
There are average power conference teams in the tournament every single year. If you look at anybody that projects this type of thing right now, Missouri is not only in, they are still, as of today, seeded to win a game. They are not on the bubble. They are, if they lose to Florida and lose to LSU, then maybe they're sliding toward it. But they're not on the bubble as of today. I think that I understand the worry and maybe even the panic over the last 2.5 weeks, but they built up so much equity over the first 2.5 months of the season that they could afford a slide like this.
And Gabe, I heard you say the other night, really, if they win one more game, one more game is what they need.
I don't even think it matters which one.
Right.
Because playing A&M wasn't going to help them in any way. Playing Vandy won't help them in any way. And Missouri, I think, will push for LSU to be that replacement game next week. I don't know if that's how it'll work out, but they beat Florida. That's a quad 1 win. They're in. They beat LSU. That's a quad 1 win. They're in. They just go down and beat like Georgia in the first round of the SEC tournament. They're in. And honestly, with 2 of their next 3 games being quad 1 wins, I don't think you'd want to tempt it, but maybe 0-3 would even still get them in. Now they might find themselves in a play-in game. It's not something you'd be sweating on Selection Sunday if they don't win again. But if they win one more game, I don't think there's much question.
Yeah. Dave, let's talk about the return of Jeremiah Tillman. He came back before the South Carolina game, was a big factor there, and really was a big factor against Ole Miss in the loss. And I mean, truly, this is such an obvious statement to say, but they're a different team with him in the lineup and in the game.
And when he's playing well, he was so locked in at South Carolina. That was the thing I think was probably the natural concern was, okay, he's gone through some tough times. How engaged will he be in the game? And here's a guy who's going into that game was shooting about right around 50% from the free throw line. He's really fallen off there. He was close to 70 his 2 prior years. For whatever reason, he's been in a funk there. Goes 7 for 7 from the line and didn't miss a shot, didn't commit a foul. He was as close to, you don't want to use the word perfect in basketball, but pretty perfect. I mean, he was really, really good. And when he's playing well, when he's a threat, it makes everybody else more dangerous, obviously, because you just don't see 6'10", 260-pound, guys like him in college basketball very often these days. And when he's really playing well, I mean, they're next to impossible to beat. He didn't get as many chances against Ole Miss, but that really wasn't on him. Thought he still played pretty well. They let the officials, they swallowed the whistles in that game on both ends of the court. They weren't calling much under the rim. And that it's to the point now where that almost hurts him more than in the past, where it would hurt him because, he'd be on the bench so quick, but now he's looking to draw fouls instead of the other way around. And he really wasn't getting a lot of those chances.
Yep. So here they sit at 17-7. And now, Gabe, they sort of get this mini bye because of COVID. So they'll take the weekend off before they play next week, midweek at Florida. And then in another game, might be Vandy, might be LSU. But then, as hard as it is to believe, then the regular season's over and then you're into tournament basketball.
Yeah. And I think what the Ole Miss loss meant top 4 is out of the question. They can't do that anymore. That's off the table. They're going to be looking at probably a 6-7 seed in the SEC tournament, which, whatever. It is what it is. I've said all along, I'd try to get in and out of Nashville as soon as possible and not much mess with that. And then you get in the NCAA tournament, and look, there's a reason we love this event, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I know it sounds good as a Missouri fan to say these days, well, they're going to lose the first round. This is over. I mean, and they might, right? They might lose the first game. But also, this is a team that already this season has beaten Wichita State, Illinois, and Oregon in consecutive games. So would it be the wildest thing that's ever happened in college basketball for this team to find itself in an Elite Eight? No, it wouldn't. I'm not predicting that's going to happen, but every year we start the tournament and we fill out our brackets. And if you've had the 1 seed and the 2 seed in the Elite Eight in every region, you've done it wrong because it's not going to happen.
Right.
And we'll see every year we see, okay, there's a path. I mean, when you get the bracket, you look at, especially your own team, you say, all right, well, if this falls the right way, we got a shot. And so that's what I think a lot of Missouri fans are hanging their hat on, even with the poor play recently, Dave. They're like, hey, let's get a reset this weekend and let's go out and let's see what we can do.
Yeah, I keep getting, probably the most popular question I've been asked lately is, can they win a game in the tournament? And I said, well, show me the bracket first. I mean, let's see. I mean, what if they catch a mid-major team that's won like 17 games in a row that's just playing really well and really hot? Or what if they get a play in a game where like Seton Hall plays Minnesota and then plays a day later, has to play Missouri? We just don't know. I mean, like Gabe said, right now, they're in position to be seeded as the better team, as the higher seeded team, but we know that doesn't mean anything. So who knows? I mean, I do know that I heard this from some people around college basketball probably 2 weeks ago, that Missouri's not the kind of team you want to play because they've got veteran guards and they've got a big man that most teams are going to struggle to match up against. But, if they come in just spiraling like this right now and barely get in as an 8 seed or even a 7, all bets are off. But we have no idea.
Dave, I don't believe that's the most popular question you've gotten this week, because I know what the most popular question I've gotten this week, and it isn't that.
The most popular question I'll answer, put it that way.
So the men's 14-7, 7-7 in the SEC. The women beat Florida 96-80. They had a team record 18 threes in that game. Mizzou is 8-9. They're 4-8 in the SEC, but their net ranking is very, very high. Even at 8-9 in a crazy COVID year, I've seen some things where this team is actually on the bubble. It's hard to believe, but I don't know.
Yeah. Something about Florida playing in Mizzou Arena brings out the 3-point shooting. Because if you remember, the men last year made like 18 on their way to scoring 90 on the team they couldn't shoot. I understand being in the SEC and all that, but I just think there ought to at least be, there used to be a rule you had to be 500 to get in the NIT. There ought to be a rule you ought to be 500 to get in the NCAA tournament. I mean, I know this year's different, and I know the SEC's tough, and I'm sure that Robin would not turn down an NCAA bid if they get one. But 8 and 9, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it?
It is, and they do have a chance. I mean, they host Tennessee, which is a ranked team. They travel to Mississippi State, so they have a chance to get a couple of quality wins. But the thing is, if they're not wins, then you're looking at 8-11, and I think all bets are off.
Yeah, the crazy thing about this team, going into the week, they were 4th in the country in field goal percentage. They are like a historically good shooting team, and the only teams above them, one of them's UConn, one of them's somebody else, another really good power conference team, and then you got Missouri, who, that tells me maybe they're not the best defensively if they're the 4th best shooting team in America and they're still under 500. So they get hot against the right opponent. They can probably beat anybody, but we've shown they can't finish games.
It also tells me they have a whole lot of possessions where they never get a shot off. They like to turn the ball over a lot.
Yes, good point.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So they have Tennessee and Mississippi State. Mississippi State game is on Sunday at 3:00. And we will talk about a whole bunch more with football and basketball coming up in the tweets. So we'll take a break. When we come back, your tweets right here on Tiger Sidelines on MC20. Welcome back, everybody. This is Tiger Sidelines. Don't forget, we're at Tiger Sidelines on Twitter. We always invite your questions, comments, and snide remarks. Well, not maybe all snide remarks. Our first one is from Ms. Mike, who says, who or what position is most important in the 2022 recruiting class? With the state of Missouri having a great class in 2022, can Drink keep them home? And how much has the defensive back coaching change affected things? A lot of things in there, so let's just take it one by one. How important, Gabe, is this 2022 class?
I mean, they're all important, especially when you're trying to rebuild a program. A program like Missouri can't afford a year of bad recruiting. You gotta get this thing going. So it's important. I don't know that it's any more important than 2021 or 2023, but it's a big deal.
Is the in-state class better than most years?
I always hate to answer that question in March because they're new names and we get all excited about them, right? I mean, and look, I was as guilty as anybody of making a big deal about that 2018 group. And you look at what they've done in college, it isn't very much, right? So I don't know. There's a lot of guys out there that seem to have a lot of offers. And I say seem because I don't always trust that all of those offers are actual offers. But yeah, I mean, there's some good players in the state. I don't think there's any question.
And then the coaching change has been made at the defensive backs, Dave.
Yeah, I think it's still about having the right players there more than it does the coaches. I don't know if there's going to be a dramatic improvement or drop off in the secondary. I mean, David Gibbs was brought in because he was like, the interception whisperer who created all these interceptions at every place he went. And what happened? Missouri stopped intercepting passes for 2 years. So, yeah, I mean, it's these guys that they're hiring between Steve Wilkes and Aaron, what's his last name? Fletcher. Yes, Aaron Fletcher, who knows if we'll even get to interview him. And Jethro Franklin, the new D-line coach. We'll see. I mean, you hate to say that whatever they did at their last stop, they're going to duplicate the next stop because it's all about players. And I think should be major concerns about their secondary going into next season. Just you lose two pretty good senior safeties. Who are they going to replace them with? Cornerback, I'm not sure I'd say that was really a position of strength anyway. And they bring back a couple guys there. So we'll see.
But Dave, is he going to coach our boys to turn their head around and find the football finally and not line them up?
Given a 25-yard cushion at the line of scrimmage.
We should point out that spring football does start, and it does look like you guys might get to see some practice.
Right.
This time tomorrow, we'll be sitting out in the bleachers at Furrow Field and get to check things out. I've heard there might be a couple that are open to the public as well. So look, I think that's great. I was joking with Mitchell Forty last night, like, we get a 45-minute window on Friday. Do you think we will make it through that 45-minute window before being like, dude, I don't want to cover spring football practice anymore?
And let's stop calling it spring football practice. I know it got a little bit warmer this week, but there's still some snow on my driveway. So come on now.
Well, you got three boys. They should be out shoveling.
Right.
Yeah, well,
I mean, free labor. Hey, Steve wants to know who is the most important Tiger on this year men's basketball team. And from what we said in the first, I mean, Jeremiah Tillman is important, but Xavier Pinson is the guy, especially recently when he's been 1 for 9, they don't win.
I think they can survive a day where Tillman's not great. I don't think they can play well when Pinson isn't good. I think he's actually kind of the most indicative player of how far they're going to go in these tournaments.
And Drew Smith might be second, right?
Drew's probably more reliable. Like he puts up a Drew Smith line almost every night. I mean, when he does struggle a little bit, like there's other guys that can do what he does. I think one thing that's really indicative of how they play, it's Drew Smith and Pinson getting to the free throw line. When those guys don't get to the foul line, they usually lose. And, 3 of the last 4 games, I think, for Pinson, he hasn't attempted a free throw. or maybe 3 of the last 5. That hasn't happened all season. It barely ever happened last year. So that just shows where he is on the floor and what he's trying to do when he's not getting to the foul line.
And Dave, if I remember right, I think you asked Konzo the question, did he think about playing Drew Buggs? Because they were having more success with him the other night.
I mean, they went on a 15-2 run to get it back in the game, and Pinson was on the bench for the entire run. And then he comes back in, and that the game gets back and forth a little bit, and then he's out there for all those last possessions that didn't do well. Now I understand Konzo's logic there. I mean, they needed points. Pinson is their leading scorer, and last check, his 36 points against TCU are still more than any player in the SEC has scored in a game this year. So he is a guy you want out there, but you want the good Pinson out there. You don't want the disengaged one. So he said, yeah, I gave it some thought, but they're so limited offensively, at least scoring with Buggs. And he wasn't playing great that game. He had 3 turnovers and 1 assist. But I do wonder, because you got to figure in the defense too. And we know Pinson's not a very good defender. If this continues and there's not a lot of season left for it to continue, do they think about playing him more?
Also, though, as much outrage as we've seen, can you imagine the outrage if they lose that game by 6 points with Xavier Pinson on the bench?
Yes.
I mean, it's
you can't win. You just can't win.
The problem is the outcome, not the way they got there. But it is crazy that we're talking about a guy who literally is not a threat to shoot the ball and even less of a threat to make the shot when he takes it. That the offense is better with him, and it's less praise of Buggs than it is kind of criticism of what Pinson has done lately.
They're like 70 points better when Buggs is on the floor this year. Some of that's matchups. Wow. He comes in against the second unit sometimes, but still, the numbers can't lie after 20 games.
Yeah, that is startling. All right, thanks for those tweets. Don't forget, we're at Tiger Sidelines. We'll take a break and we'll talk about softball and baseball when we come back. You're watching Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back, everybody. This is Tiger Sidelines. Gabe DeArmond, Dave Matter, and I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks for joining us as always. The number 19 softball team continuing their strong start. They go 4-1 on their trip to Florida. They dropped the first game to Iowa State 9-8. They won 4 straight, including a big win on Wednesday, 6-5 over number 22 Central Florida at Central Florida. The Tigers have started off pretty quickly at 7-2. They'll head to Mobile, Alabama from Friday to Sunday, and they expect to play 5 games, which is about what softball does. They play a ton on the weekends, but so far for Coach Anderson, Dave, this is a very good start.
Good start. They're hitting a lot of home runs. Every time I check out a box score, it's like that's all they do. Not all they do, but it's a lot of what they do. And it's up and down the lineup too. It's not just 1 or 2 players. So really good start for them. And this goes with baseball too. I mean, these teams haven't been able to practice outside at all in Columbia. So they're behind other teams, especially when they go to these warmer climates and play these teams in Florida and, FAU and Central Florida and Florida State. So to win these games, I think is a big statement early.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I talked to somebody who went to the baseball series out in Arizona. Baseball started 1-3. They said, well, we didn't hit very well. We didn't pitch very well. And our defense was terrible. Aside from that, it was great.
Good special team.
Yeah. Grand Canyon is a team that probably nobody's heard of. They're picked to win the WAC. So they're better than most people will think, but still you can't go 1-3 on that trip, Gabe.
Yeah, I looked up, they are a better program than people think. I mean, baseball's weird, right? Like Dallas Baptist is a top 10 program in the country. So this isn't football or basketball, but I looked up 2 years ago when they were, I think 36-24 and a good team. Grand Canyon went like 2-8 against Power 5 competition, so you would have liked to at least have seen a split or something out there. But also, I don't know, had Steve Beezer's team even practiced? Like it was negative 12 degrees in Columbia. What could they have been doing? So I'll start my annual rant that it's stupid to play college baseball in February and make teams like Missouri play 20 road games before they get to come home. I know they're coming home this weekend, but point remains. I don't understand why we got to start in February and go till late June.
And you're playing a team that's could practice all year round. I mean, I know there's rules in place, but Grand Canyon, it obviously wasn't the first time they were outside, and it looked like Missouri. I think their best pitcher, Spencer Miles, went 5 innings, and that's the most anybody went on the weekend. I mean, you can try to simulate game stuff all you want, but it's just not the same.
And they don't have Connor Ash yet. He's probably their most experienced starter, and he's not ready to go yet. And they've got freshmen out there pitching. They had like 8 guys pitching one of the games. So that's not to say, this team is going to win the SEC or anything, but you kind of write off this series a little bit to see how they do. And once they kind of figure out who they are a little bit more.
Up next, Missouri will be at home against Omaha on Friday to Sunday. They'll play 4 games at Taylor Stadium. Fortunately for them, Friday and Saturday look to be halfway decent days here in Columbia. But they'll finally get to play at home, and we'll see what happens there. By the way, it's the longest trip of the year for the Mizzou wrestling team, as number 5 Mizzou wrestling goes to the MAC championships out in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. They'll start wrestling on Friday morning, all day Friday, all day Saturday for the MAC championships, and Missouri going for a 10th straight conference championship in a row, 9th MAC in a row. And when I talked to Brian Smith, he said, listen, we'll be disappointed if all 10 of our wrestlers don't get into the finals. That's the expectation as they go to the conference tournament.
And can you have Brian Smith call Buzz Williams? Like, we got wrestling teams out here traveling all the way across the country, managing to play, and Buzz Williams' basketball team can't get on the floor in the last month somehow because of COVID. So good job, wrestling team.
Yeah, and they've taken all the precautions, let me assure you. The gymnastics team lost to number 5 Georgia, but the score was a season high for Missouri. The Tigers now 1-5, but they scored a 196.850. So the one thing you can say, Dave, is their score has continually gone upward all season. It's just, that's life in the SEC.
I want to say it was their best road score in SEC meet maybe ever. It was close.
I mean, if you want to say it, because nobody on this show is going to prove
it. It was by far. It was their best since joining the SEC on the road. Excellent job.
Number 25 volleyball got a series win, blanking Georgia 3-0 and 3-0. The Tigers are 10-4 there. They'll travel to South Carolina on Friday and Saturday, as everybody's playing in South Carolina right now. Before we wrap this up, let's just talk about what's coming up this weekend as far as no basketball game for the Missouri men's team. Is this a good thing or not really? Do they need to play?
I mean, it just is. It doesn't really matter. They've got to go down to Gainesville on Wednesday, and every time they take the floor now is a chance to kind of put all this to rest, win a game. You're in the tournament, all that. But every time you don't do it, it gets a little tougher to do it the next time. Right. So, we'll see if Xavier Pinson is the guy they need. We'll see if Drew Smith can bounce back a little bit. And the thing about the SEC is there's really no game that you look at and say, well, this is unwinnable. I mean, there's a bunch of decent teams in the league. Like Florida's solid. They'll make the tournament, but going to Gainesville and winning would not be the biggest shocker.
The good news is, I guess, if it's we know it's Florida for sure. And then if it's LSU, there's no fool's gold wins left. So if they win either of these games, if they win by 1 at the buzzer, that's a good win. It's not like getting out of South Carolina, like, all right, problems are fixed. We had a team meeting. We got Jeremiah back and everything's figured out. No, now these would be legit wins. You feel good about yourself. You move on, you build some momentum. And then what do they do this weekend? I don't know, just not get COVID. That should be the number one goal. And then, I don't know, maybe some more player meetings. Those seem to work.
Yep, they'll stay in their bubble and have a team meeting. And we'll talk about it next week. Thanks for watching Tigers Sidelines. For Matt and Brian behind the scenes, that's Gabe DeArmond and Dave Matter. I'm Bo Bayman. We'll see you next week on Tigers Sidelines on MC22.